He was dying in the back seat of a black SUV on the way to the city hospital, while rain hammered the windshield like furious fists, and in that moment, time felt impossibly slow and unbearably precious. Every breath he drew was a fight against the darkness creeping into his consciousness, every heartbeat a fragile thread tethering him to life. Blood pooled on the cracked leather, his strength slipping as the driver raced against a storm that seemed intent on swallowing them whole. He could barely blink, barely think, but all he could see, etched in the blur of rain and panic, was the face of his little girl, her small hand clutching his shirt, trusting him in ways only a child could. If he lived, it would be for her. If he died, she'd be alone. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the surprising twists of fate that make life both cruel and beautiful, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel before we continue. His name was Aaron Hale, a single father with tired eyes and calloused hands, worn thin by years of struggle and sacrifice. No one in the affluent parts of the city knew his name. No one in the glittering boardrooms or executive suites had ever given him more than a passing glance. He worked odd jobs, repairing air conditioners in the summer heat, delivering packages in the winter cold, anything he could do to keep a roof over his daughter's head and food on their modest table. He'd lost his wife to illness 5 years earlier. His world had narrowed to the one bright beacon that kept him going, his daughter, Lily. She was his heartbeat, his dawn after every long, unforgiving night. That night, Lily had been at a charity event hosted by the city's most influential family, the Lockwoods. The gala was supposed to be Lily's reward for finishing top of her class at school. A night out with other children of the elite, glimmering dresses and tailored suits under chandeliers. Aaron had been hesitant, worried about the crowds, the expectations, the harsh judgment of strangers. But he saw her smile, so wide and proud, and he knew he couldn't take that moment away from her. He had dropped her off at the grand estate with a polite wave and a promise to pick her up later. When the call came, it was after midnight. The voice on the other end was frantic, clipped with urgency. Lily had collapsed. She was pale, shaking, and eerie in her stillness, lips stained with an unnatural gray. They had rushed her into an ambulance, but the doctor's voice on the phone, so calm, so practiced, was the cruelest kind of truth. Lily needed a rare blood type, one that was nearly impossible to find in the city's dwindling reserves. Without it, she wouldn't last the night. Aaron didn't think. He drove to the hospital in a blur, adrenaline and fear vaulting him through the streets, rain blurring the city lights into streaks of haunting color. When he arrived, a nurse met him at the sliding doors, eyes soft with pity and exhaustion. They led him to a small room where the doctor explained the rarity of Lily's blood type, how they'd contacted every hospital in the region and were still coming up short. "There may be one donor," the doctor said quietly, but... His words trailed into a hollow silence that felt like a tomb closing. The nurse left the door open just a crack. Aaron sat, unmoving, mind numb with dread, until a young woman in a white coat stepped in, holding a clipboard. She was the CEO's daughter, the Lockwood daughter. Not the one who collapsed, but the one who had been cheering on stage earlier that evening, her laughter rich and easy, the kind that made others feel small by comparison. Her eyes flicked to Aaron with something akin to recognition, then something harsher. She'd seen him moments before at the gala offering quiet help to a waitress who had spilled drinks on her tray, and she had mocked him. A laugh under her breath, a glance that weighed him in judgment and found him wanting. The memory of her smirk stung sharp, a bitter reminder of how the world could be so cruel to those who stumbled beneath its gleaming surface. But this night was different. The young woman looked at Aaron now with an urgency that erased her earlier disdain. "You're Lily's father," she said, words rushed and jagged. "We need a donor. You're the match." Aaron blinked once, then again, heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He didn't understand. How could he be a match? He had never been tested. He barely knew his own blood type. But the doctors confirmed it. His rare type, the exact one Lily needed. There was only one unit available, and it was him. He stood then, without hesitation, and walked into the sterile room where white lights hummed overhead, and walls smelled of antiseptic and fear. A nurse guided him to the donation chair, and as the needle pierced his skin, Pain mingled with purpose in his veins. Every drop he gave was a silent promise, his last if need be, that his daughter would live. Outside, rain battered the city as if the heavens themselves mourned with him. Inside, time slowed to the steady drip of life into a bag that would make the difference between despair and hope. In that moment, every exhaustion, every unpaid bill, every lonely night felt like the price he was willing to pay. He closed his eyes, thinking of Lily's smile, her small laugh, her gentle firmness when she reminded him that they were a team. They had survived loss together. They could survive anything. Hours later, after the last drop had been drawn and stitched away, the nurse helped him to a chair in the waiting room. He was spent, pale, weak, but alive with a purpose fulfilled. And then the doctor appeared, her face soft with relief, telling him Lily's vitals were stabilizing, color creeping back to her cheeks like sunrise after long night. His heart wanted to leap, but all he could do was breathe, that one truth anchoring him: she would live. The Lockwood daughter approached him then, her once perfect composure replaced with something unguarded, shame, gratitude, and something like wonder. She apologized, her voice shaky with sincerity that came from the deep corners of realization. She had mocked him for his tattered jacket and humble ways, never seeing the man beneath the labels. "I was wrong," she said, eyes brimming. "You saved her. You saved her life." Aaron didn't shrug off her apology, didn't distance himself behind some proud facade. He simply nodded, offering a weary but genuine smile. There was no triumph in his expression, only the quiet strength of a man who had stood in the fire for love's sake. Days later, when Lily opened her eyes and saw her father's face bent with relief and aching tenderness, she reached for his hand with that same unwavering trust she had always given him. And in that room, filled with the gentle hum of hospital life and blooming flowers sent by kindly donors, there was something healing not just in her recovery, but in the way people began to see Aaron. Not as a struggling, invisible worker, but as a hero of profound humility. His sacrifice had shifted something in their hearts, making them rethink who they judged, who they overlooked, and who deserved compassion. News cameras flocked to the hospital, flashes igniting the night as reporters spoke of the mysterious single father who had given his own blood to save a child. Some viewers called him a saint, others spoke of destiny and fate woven into human stories like threads of gold. But Aaron shied from every accolade, brushing off praise with the same modest smile that had carried him through years of obscurity. He was simply a father who loved his daughter more than life itself. Life didn't instantly become easy afterwards. Bills still needed paying, the nights were still long and the days still hard. But something had shifted in the city's heart, a renewed belief that kindness, even in its quietest form, was worth honoring. People offered help, donations came for Lily's recovery, and even clients began seeking Aaron's services, not out of pity but respect. The world, it seemed, had been reminded that the measure of a person wasn't in their attire or bank account, but in the depth of their courage and the breadth of their heart. And the Lockwood daughter, once so unaffected by the realities of common life, found herself often at Aaron's doorstep with flowers or coffee, or just a nod of gratitude that spoke louder than any words ever could. She became an advocate for people like him, using her voice to champion kindness where it was least expected. In her speeches, she told the story not just of the blood he gave, but of the humanity he carried, of compassion that didn't waver in the face of judgment. She reminded others that every person, no matter their walk in life, had a story rich with pain, hope, and unspoken strength. And in those public forums, people saw what had been right in front of them all along, that true heroes often walk unnoticed until the moment their light becomes impossible to ignore. Aaron and Lily returned home one afternoon to a small crowd gathered outside their humble house, a modest wreath of flowers, letters tied with ribbons, and gifts left by neighbors and strangers who had been moved by their story. Lily, still wrapped in her father's gentle presence, stepped forward with shy smiles and laughter that had once faded, but now blossomed again. Aaron looked on, pride and tenderness warming his chest as he knelt to her level. In that quiet front yard, surrounded by the soft buzz of community and connection, he felt a peace that had been elusive in the years past. It wasn't the peace of wealth or ease, but the peace of purpose fulfilled, of love given freely and returned in the most unexpected ways. Weeks turned into months, and Lily recovered fully. Her laughter once again filled their home with sparkling joy. Aaron took on more work, but always with balance, never again neglecting the precious moments that made life worth living. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit on the worn sofa and reach for Lily's small hand in his, marveling at her resilience and the way her presence had transformed him into someone braver than he'd ever thought possible. He had walked through fear and come out with his spirit not broken but refined like gold in fire. And the city, forever changed by the ripple effect of his sacrifice, began to embrace the idea that one act of kindness could alter the course of countless lives. People donated blood in droves, inspired by his courage. They volunteered, they helped strangers, and most importantly, they looked past the surface to see the soul beneath. In boardrooms and cafes, on buses, and in quiet libraries, conversations shifted. People began to speak of empathy and second chances as not merely abstract ideals, but real forces capable of bridging divides. In the months that followed the crisis, Aaron was invited to speak at events, not as a celebrity, but as a humble beacon of hope. He shared his story with candor, never seeking the spotlight but illuminating the lives of others who felt unseen. He spoke of fear and love, of the night that could have claimed his daughter, and the strength that rose in its place. Listeners cried, others stood in ovation, moved not by theatrics, but by authenticity so profound it resonated deep within their hearts. Near the end of the year, on a crisp winter morning, Aaron took Lily to the hospital where it all began. They stood in the quiet corridor, far from the beeping machines and sterile lights, near a window that glowed with soft sunlight. Aaron bent down and whispered something to Lily, something tender and full of gratitude for a life continued. They hugged, and for a moment, the world seemed impossibly gentle, as if the universe itself was gently cradling them in its vast, unending arms. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in the power of compassion and the strength that lives in every parent's love, please engage with this video, like, share, and let others feel inspired by Aaron's journey. And before the ending, I'd love for you to comment on what part of this story moved you the most and why it stayed with you.